Good morning, church family.
Good morning.
God in action. Let's all say that.
God in action.
Today is the conclusion of that idea, wonderful idea. God is in action.
Yeah.
You know, this morning at the first service, I was doing a continuation from the third Sunday when I was here, July the 17th, about our evolution. And I was reflecting on that in terms of how we came together. And we came together as a result of the activity of Spirit. You know, it all began as I identified a new place to live. And in acquiring this property, I happened to meet a young man one day in the middle of the street who was to be my neighbor. His name was Charles Moorhead, most of you know him. And the day I met Charles, he was talking with another minister there in the middle of the street. And as I came down the stairs, I introduced myself, and this other minister was soliciting funds for some activity that they were having at their church. So when he asked me for a contribution, I told him, well, I was unable to do that because our church was in the midst of an acquisition project. And all the dollars I had was going to my own church. He said, well, what church do you go to? And I said, I attend the Los Angeles Third Church of Religious Science. And he said, where's that at? And I told him. So one Sunday morning, he appeared at church with his wife and a couple of friends of his. And this was just prior to our moving here. We were still over on 11th Avenue, preparing ourselves to move. And after that service, he called me and he said to me, we have got to have you over at City of Angels. We have got to have you over there. And for the next, I don't know how many months, this man pestered Robbie Smith. I don't think she got a moment's rest after that first Sunday morning when he left 11th Avenue, insisting that I be one of the guest speakers over at the City of Angels. Finally, through movement of Spirit, it happened. I was invited to be the morning speaker there. And I went there that Sunday morning and I spoke, and it was a full house, a wonderful house. And at the conclusion of that morning lesson, as I came down the stairs from the stage, I was just absolutely mobbed. It was just so much wonderful love there, and they just literally mobbed me. And there was one woman in particular, she latched on and she didn't let go. And she said to me, could you become our minister? Needless to say, I was quite flattered. I mean, my very first Sunday there, the very first time I spoke, and I'm extended the invitation to become the new minister. And I said to her, well, no, ma'am. I said, you know, I have a church and I'm happy there. And I said, you know, one thing about LA Third Church that all of you have found out since you've come here, and that is that you've just not come into a building, but you've entered into a family. And that's something unique about this place that's different maybe from a lot of others. That as you enter in, we embrace you. We just don't welcome you into a membership and your name just goes on a roster somewhere, but you are an active part, or you invite to become an active part of a family. So within a couple of Sundays, that same young lady, she was here. And she was sitting right over here on the front row. There were 2 rows at that time. And she sat on the first row of those first 2 rows every Sunday. And you knew her by the name of Pearl Maxbury. Pearl was the pioneer. Pearl came up in here and found herself a seat and she stayed. And then she sent out her scouts. She sent out her scouts, and before you know it, 1 by 1, 2 by 2, group by group, God was in action, bringing us together as the family that we become. And that's that's just one of the many illustrations of the activity of God directing us to a place of good.
Yes.
The other morning I was watching Super Soul Sunday. And on this particular show, Oprah was interviewing a doctor by the name of Dr. Eben Alexander. And Dr. Alexander was a neurologist. And he's the author of a book entitled Proof of Heaven. So when he came on, I said, well, that's an interesting book for a doctor and neurologist to write. So as part of the interview, he shared with her an experience that he had had. Some kind of way he had contracted meningitis. And it was really debilitating. He had reached the point where he brought in pictures of his CAT scan. And it showed that his brain was just wallowing in this huge mass of pus. And the prognosis for him, he said, was very grim. The doctors had told his wife that he would need to, once he left the hospital, to go to a convalescent hospital, and there he would remain for the remainder of his days, and more than likely he would evolve into a very vegetable-like state. And he said while he was in the hospital, he slipped into a coma. He was in a coma for a few weeks. He said, but while in the coma, he was very conscious of the things that were happening to him. And he said to her, while in that coma, I went to heaven. And so she chuckled and she said, well, you know, that must be interesting. I'm sure you've heard that many times from a lot of your patients. She said, but I want to know, if you were in heaven, did you meet God? And he said, well, I did, except that it was this way. He said, I didn't meet a being, I met a presence.
Yes. Yes.
So that's what I was in the midst of, a divine presence. I had a divine experience. And he went on to describe this experience. He says, I was engulfed so completely in this light. And in this light, he said, I just felt like I was in the midst of the essence of pure love, and everything just felt so fine. And I was not in any pain, but I was in a place of complete happiness. And the level of happiness that I was experiencing is really kind of difficult to describe. And he said, but that's the place that I was at. And everything was just so extremely wonderful. So it was a place that I could have absolutely remained. Well, he came out of the coma. Obviously, he wrote this book. But not only did he come out of the coma, within 3 months after coming out of the coma, he was back into practice. Now, this is a Harvard-trained neurologist. He is a private physician, and he is a teacher at the College of Medical Sciences. An individual writing of an experience that he had while in the midst of an illness. And so she asked him, well prior to this, did you consider yourself very religious or very spiritual? And he said, well, I wouldn't say that I was that. He said, I did believe in God. I believed that there was something that exists. And she said, well, were you active in church? He said, well, no, I went to church maybe Christmas and maybe on Easter.
Yeah.
That was the extent of his church experience. So it wasn't like this was an individual that was readily embracing of a spiritual reality that he was sharing with everyone. This was something new to him, but as the result of this experience, his life was completely altered. And thus he wrote this book, because he said, in writing of this book, I believe that there is something beyond this experience. And then there is something that greets us beyond this experience. And in that which greets us, it embraces us. And in its embrace is all the healing we need. Everything that we could possibly ever desire is there. And thus, that was the result of that experience. I was reminded of the writings of Albert Einstein, who wrote, "I need to understand how God thinks, because everything else is just a detail." Because every idea is fully loaded.
Amen.
I need to understand just how God thinks. Now, that would be a wonderful thing to understand, especially since there is but one mind. And we are thinking through that mind. We are operating through that mind. We are a part of that mind. And there are things, there are activities, there are a whole myriad of stuff that we are involved in, but maybe do not quite understand. You know, we want to really understand this unity that we have with Spirit and just how it operates through us and how we can direct it even more in our experiences and in our circumstances. We hear about this being a possibility, but just how does it happen? Well, we begin to make it happen in instances like this when we come to church and we are led in a meditation, when we're led through an affirmation, when someone gets up and begins to describe for us or take us through an exercise of affirming something positive and different within our experience. But after doing that, we need to have a level of expectation that we're not just following someone for no reason at all, but that something is happening to us as much as it is happening through us as a result of what it is that we're doing. That we are furthering the connection that we believe that we have. That God being omnipresent, everywhere present, always, all the time, is using us each and every moment as an avenue by which it may operate for us, if that is indeed our desire. So I want to understand how it thinks, because if I understand how it thinks, then I can better understand how to use it in my own circumstance.
Yeah.
I believe that's why the Apostle Paul said, "Let that mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus," because that was a mind that understood how the mind of God thinks. A mind that will not allow itself to be limited by the appearance nor by any limiting idea.
Yes.
To realize that we are all greater than that.
Yes.
And therefore that life rewards us based upon the things that we're willing to accept. Ernest Holmes comes along and he says, "Listen, Spirit works for us by working through us. And it can only become power to us when we recognize it as power." Something about us, that we have a role to play in this great orchestra of life that we are a part of. Spirit works for us by working through us. God has selected each of us as an avenue of its own operation, a way in which it might bless us. You know, it's nothing mysterious or superstitious about it, but it's all very real. That we are a channel for divine expression. And therefore, we are a channel for divine expression. That means that on some level, we are a blessed being. No need to belittle ourselves or to allow ourselves to be belittled by someone else, because we are indeed a blessed being. God is in action through us each and every moment. And we deny that activity ourselves by our refusal to accept it. Our inability to direct it, and our unwillingness to understand that we have greatness that is within us, albeit dormant at times. And that dormancy is the result of our own thinking. It's not because the divine wishes to be dormant. Imagine something right where you are looking for you to give it greater access into the thing that you call your life, and saying to you in the silent recesses of your own mind, "If you allow me to do that, then I will bless you."
Yes.
Yes.
Bless you at the level which you want to be blessed.
Yes.
Bless you at the level of your own vision.
Yes.
How expansive is your vision? Once again, we get to this place of understanding God in action and allow that activity to happen. One, by use of an affirmation. So let's affirm something. Let's imagine for a moment that we are sitting, standing, or just existing in our divine potential. That's all it will ever be unless you do something with it. We're in the midst of our own divine potential. So let's say something into that space. Begin with this word. I say yes to life.
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 I am inspired.
I am inspired.
Empowered.
Empowered.
And guided by divine intelligence.
And guided by divine intelligence.
Think of it for a moment. Would you dare allow that to happen to you?
Yes.
To be guided by divine intelligence.
Yes.
Now imagine, every day you have that opportunity, and that's why you're in your divine potential. You have the opportunity to be guided by divine intelligence, but that means that you got to yield. You have to kind of move yourself out of the way so that you can hear that which is speaking to you. You know, so often we get caught up in those stories about something speaking out of a burning bush, and unless we see a bush burning and a voice coming out of it, God is not saying anything. But we are beyond that. That was a story to prove a point. We are beyond that. It's about us opening our own self up that we might receive that message of spirit. Let's continue. I create a greater good.
I create a greater good.
To experience now.
To experience now.
In this moment.
In this moment.
In this day.
In this day.
The greatness of God.
The greatness of God.
Is operating through me.
Is operating through me.
As me.
As me.
I feel it.
I feel it.
I believe it.
I believe it.
I accept it.
I accept it.
Key terms. Feeling it, believing it, and accepting it. Something that you must do. It is flowing, it is fluid, it is operating. You cannot escape it. God being everywhere present. That means everywhere you are, the presence, the power, and the activity of God exists. And the moment that you align yourself with it, and alignment is a conscious thing that you say to yourself that that's what you're doing. The moment that you align yourself with it, then you allow yourself to feel it. The moment you feel it, you begin to believe it. And the more you are able to believe it, then you can accept it. And the moment that you begin to accept it, something then begins to happen.
Yes.
Change begins to unfold.
Yes.
Your circumstance then begins to change.
Yes.
The reality of spirit in union with you all of a sudden presents itself in such a way that is undeniable. God revealing itself to you, for you, as you, and through you. Imagine being selected for all of that. That's just how special you are. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, says that every word or idea in divine mind is sown by man in his mind, and then brought forth according to man's receptivity. Every idea in divine mind is sown by man in his mind. You know, when I was here the last time, I talked about the space orbiter Juno. That space orbiter that was sent in space to do analysis of the planet Jupiter. This is something that said that was launched 5 years ago. But imagine, when did it originate in the mind of someone? Maybe 10 years before that, that origination began. The genius of God implanted in the mind of a receptive individual, one that believed in possibility. And as this idea began to come, he began to accept it. Didn't give up on the idea just because it took a little time for its unfolding. You know, so often when we receive an idea, because it doesn't appear immediately, we begin to doubt God. But here's an instance of what happens when one does not doubt. One allows the idea to continue to fester in consciousness until it becomes a living reality. Then all of a sudden we see this space orb that is sent into space, something that is traveling 1.5 billion miles away. Imagine being empowered by something that began as an idea.
Yes.
What are the ideas that you have? That you have denied life to?
Yes.
Come on. Come on.
And then we wonder why we are where we are. It's because you've not given life to the thing that God has given you. The idea is fully loaded. It has everything that is necessary for it to evolve from an abstract reality within your consciousness to a manifested thing within your experience. That's how spirit operates. Imagine being able to understand how God thinks. Yes. And you see why everything else is just a detail. Because it moves from there. There was a story in Scripture called the Parable of the Talents. This is a story that a lot of us have heard so often. And that story goes in terms of the Lord calling 3 servants together and giving them all talents before he left to go on his journey. So the first one he calls in, he gives him 5 talents. The second one, he gives 2 talents. The third one, he gives 1. And then leaves them to do whatever it is that they desire to do with that which is given to them. Isn't that kind of like God doing that to us? Yeah. Giving us ability, giving us all this greatness, and then leaves us to discover for ourselves what we can do with it. Yeah. Now, in this story, the first one went out and he multiplied. Multiplied is good. He doubled what he had. The second one, he went out and he multiplied his good. He doubled what he had. The third one, out of fear, went and buried that he had. Does that sound like maybe somebody in here? That the good that you've been given, out of fear, you buried it. Yes. You didn't multiply. You blessed yourself. You didn't believe you had the ability to multiply. So let's put ourselves in the story for a moment, okay? And let's imagine that there are 3 talents or gifts that Spirit gives us. And just for the sake of us being in the same page, let's say that the first talent is consciousness. The second talent is choice. And the third one is vision. Consciousness, choice, and vision. These are the things, the great gifts that God has given unto us. Now, let's further define them so that we're all operating on the same definition, okay? Consciousness, divine ability, a place of faith operation, knowledge of our oneness, power, keys to success. All that represents consciousness. Choice, the ability to make a selection, to be discriminating, to decide. Vision, to see it, to create the image or mold, to look beyond the appearance.
Well,
these 3 we all have. Now, what do we do with these 3 great gifts that Spirit has given unto us, and then step back? He gave us the freedom to use these as we desire, to bless ourselves or not, but it's all up to us. Now, I came up with some stories that happened maybe to some of the people that use these 3 talents. It may be you, may not be you. But let's listen anyway to the first one. These are groups. Some of us have expanded our consciousness, made a decision on our lives, and excel because we refuse to be limited by appearances. We see beyond what is in front of us and move forward in faith, believing in possibilities, accepting that our ideas are fully loaded. That's the first one. The second one. Some of us can see the progress we're making. Slowly but surely, we are moving forward into this new understanding of our divine relationship. We see ourselves making more right choices, and are receiving blessings as the result of those choices. We are becoming more trusting of our intuition and thus being able to rely on things perceived. That was the second multiplier. It was slow, but they multiplied nevertheless. And then the third. Some of us are still caught in the old way of thinking. We are still superstitious of God's desire for us and have some difficulty in believing that we are worthy of greater good. We are not trusting unless we actually have it in our hands. We hear truth, but have difficulty embracing it as our reality. We find ourselves praying harder and hoping that change will happen, and when good happens, we call it a miracle. Which of the three are you? Are you one of an expanded consciousness? Are you one that you are slowly making your way into that expansion of consciousness? Or are you the one that is still stuck in the past? The old ways are difficult to let go of. The new ways are difficult to embrace. And thus, you are just stuck there. You know, for so many of us, we are victims of the old ways. You know, unless there's not a pile of scripture that someone is throwing on us, it's really not spiritual enough for us. Now, there is nothing wrong with scripture. But one of the things that we should understand about that, and that is that's someone else's experience. What about your own? When are you going to have your own? You know that burning bush that I spoke of, that was someone else's experience. That's not yours. When you are receptive to allow yours to come in the way that you can understand and in the way that you can accept, then it comes to you. And if it's not coming to you, then there's your answer, that there is a conflict in consciousness somewhere. God is continuing to be in action. And the more that there is this divine activity, there is more of your blockages that remain in place. You know, so for so many of us, we can talk it and it sounds good. But when it comes to actually operating it, that's when we're really not willing to trust it as much as we say. Now, given that, today can be the start of something totally different for us. Today can be the start, the change for the rest of your life. That's what you desire. To move forward. Ernest Holmes says that in practice, the emancipated soul must always realize that he is in union with the Father. Now, he qualified that. He said the emancipated soul. Not the person that just talks about it, not the only one who is reminded of it when they come to church on Sunday morning, but the one who operates from this space always, all the time. That is the emancipated soul, because this is the individual that no matter what it is that they are going through or who they are going through it with, they realize that right where I am, God is, and I and my Father are one. That's the emancipated soul. He goes on to say that his word must be spoken with absolute authority. And he must know that there should be no uncertainty. The word is the only power. Everything must come from it, and nothing can stand against it. That's why in the beginning was the Word. The Word was God. The Word was with God. And such as was in the beginning. And that's where it continues to start for each and every one of us. In your mind right now, there is a Word.
Yes.
That's the beginning.
Yes.
That Word is with God. The Spirit is right there with that Word. Now, what do you do with that Word? Do you release that word in anticipation with expectation that it represents something that's going to unfold in your circumstance? Now, for the one that is the emancipated soul, you say yes to that. But you realize that that word is the only authority. God in action. I remember another very personal story, Spirit in Action. Roughly 31, 32 years ago, I used to work for this firm. And at this firm, I was the vice president in charge of government finance projects. So it was my responsibility to work in terms of the acquisition, to identify the properties, to get the options on the property, to contract with the architects, to take the properties through the entitlement process, to obtain the building permits, bid them out, and then oversee the construction of them. That was my responsibility there. And I was one of several people who had that as a responsibility. After 3 years of being involved in that as a responsibility, I began to think to myself, I can do this for me. Why am I doing this for someone else? And this is something that's going on in my head. Why? Well, one, I'm a science of mind teacher, and I'm out teaching a group. At that time, I was head of a spiritual experience called Spiritual Innovations. And a few of you were a part of that. We used to meet up at the Ramada Hotel in Culver City on Sundays. And this was long before Ricky Byers became Ricky Byers Beckwood. She was a part of our group. So we met there for a long time, and then I disbanded the group because I said, you know, I need to do something. I need a shift in consciousness. You know, it's one thing to get up in front of people and to talk about something that I've read. I said, we can all do that. Everybody in here can do that. Everybody, we can pass out science of mind textbooks, and everybody can stand up and talk about what it is that they've read. It's not real, man.
All right now. Right.
You're just reciting something that someone else wrote. It doesn't become real until you have an absolute demonstration of what it is that you're talking about. And that's what empowers us when it becomes real to us. You're not empowered just listen to me talk about what somebody else wrote. The empowerment is when those words become a living reality within your own self. So I said, you know, I wasn't going to do this anymore. I was not going to teach any more classes. I was not going to preach anymore in front of anyone. I wasn't going to do any of that anymore until such time I was able to prove this for myself. In my own life and in my own circumstance. So I stopped. So here I am working. 3 years later, I'm saying to myself, I found me an affirmation in the morning as I'm leaving out of my driveway, heading to work. I'm saying to myself, this is one of the last times that I'm going to do this. One of the last times I'm going to leave out of this driveway and drive to that job. When I would leave the job heading home, I said, this is one of the last times. This is one of the last times I'm going to leave out of this job and go home. This was my affirmation. I'm aligning with Spirit, and this is the word that I'm speaking. And I'm believing it, and I'm accepting it. And I'm visualizing a movement. So one day, I'm sitting at my desk, and the owner of the company comes in, and he says to me, he says, Ron, I have some bad news. He said, he called me kid. He says, kid, I'm gonna have to lay you off. He said, we're gonna have to let some people go. We're not doing as well, sales are not as quick as should be, etc., etc., etc. with a great big smile on my face. I stood up. I shook his hand, and I said, I understand. I cleared off my desk. I went to lunch, and I celebrated. I was going to have a great lunch that day, and I was going to celebrate. So, now, I had just recently bought a house. I had just recently bought a brand new Mercedes Benz. And I'm laid up. But it didn't make a difference. Because I truly believe in my heart, right where I am, God is. I truly believe in my heart that I and my Father are one. I didn't get up and go to the unemployment office and file for unemployment insurance. To this day, I've never been there. I just continue to believe Spirit. The next day, I launched my own business and been there ever since. God in action. And then very shortly after I did that, within a couple of months, it's a Sunday morning and I'm at LA 3rd Church of Religious Science over on the east side of town. They're listening to a colleague speak. And there that day, they invited me likewise to speak. My entry back into the pulpit. Said I wasn't going to do it again until I had proven this stuff for myself. As the scripture said, prove me herewith, said the Lord of hosts. And I'll open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that there is not room enough to receive. But it was condition. Prove me. And that is the invitation that is given to each of us every day. God is saying to each of us, I dare you to prove me in your circumstance. And I will show you the action that I am. I dare you to prove me in this situation, regardless of what it is. You may see it as difficult. I see it as an opportunity. And that's all they ever are. It's all about your perception. You can allow yourself to get caught up in the appearance, or you can look beyond that and know that the real reality is on the other side of that. Right. That you've been empowered to go through it, not to be stopped at the gate. Yeah. That's how Spirit operates. Now, once again, believing that there is the Word only. And that Word is a very powerful word. That word, when spoken in truth and realization, has real meaning, cause change to happen in our circumstance. Let's affirm another word. Say this if you will. I envision good unfolding in every area of my life. I envision good unfolding in every area of my life. With renewed faith, I call that desired good into manifestation now. My word, filled with and directed by the only power that there is, blesses my every circumstance. I am so grateful. I am so grateful. Thank you, Holy Spirit. It is done. And so it is. Now just pause for a moment and reflect on what it is that you just said. And allow that word that you've just spoken to filter into your conscious mind. Filter to the point of acceptance. Filter to the point where you're able to embrace it as your own. Then just take a deep breath. And then just relax yourself into this divine presence that surrounds us always. And now you are allowing that word to become real. You are allowing that word to live. You are allowing that word to manifest. You are allowing that word to demonstrate. You are allowing that word to bless you. Peace and blessings to you.